What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another video. So, in sports, we see a lot of teams come along with a lot of bright futures, a lot of young cores, a lot of seemingly the right pieces in place for the next year or so, in the next couple of years, and we see a lot of these teams just flame out and not live up to it. It's definitely not a rarity for teams' cores and their plans to just not pan out. We see it in every sport, and we see it every year. To me, though, no team characterizes the phrase one step forward, two steps back. Definitely more so in the NFL, but I'd even argue in sports than the New York Giants. It seems that whenever the Giants get something going for a little bit, they not only end up in the exact same spot they're in after a while, it seems like every time they end up in a much worse spot without fail. So in order to understand why this is the case and why, despite how everything looks so positive for their outlook both this year and the next couple years, despite that, and why myself and so many others are skeptical about this Giants team, gotta go a little ways back. So grab a drink. I think we're gonna be here a while, even though it's a couple years of recent history that we gotta look into, because there's a lot to examine here. Despite walking off the field for the final time in the 2022 season in Philadelphia after a 38-7 loss to the Eagles, this was actually a very successful season for the Giants. Coming into the season, the Giants had 5 straight abysmal seasons following their last playoff appearance in 2016, in which the Giants totaled a whopping 22 wins in that 5-year stretch. For those of you doing the math, yes, that is just above 4 wins per year. 2022 was different though, as many things had finally seemed to have broken in New York's way. First and foremost, they seem to have nailed the head coaching hire the offseason prior in former Bills offensive coordinator Brian Daboll, as he not only brought the Giants back to the playoffs, he took home Coach of the Year in 2022. 2019 6th overall pick Daniel Jones, who had shown nothing but being a bust up to this point, turned that on its head in his 4th season, throwing career highs in passing yards and passer rating with 3,205 yards and a 92.5 passer rating, as well as 15 passing touchdowns with an additional 7 rushing touchdowns and a career low 5 interceptions. And 2018 second overall pick Saquon Barkley, now 2 seasons removed from having a torn ACL, got back to the form that won him Offensive Rookie of the Year back in 2018, as he rushed for 1,312 yards and 10 rushing touchdowns, and tallied another 338 yards through the air. The Giants finished the season with a 9-7-1 record, trouncing their win totals from each of the previous 5 seasons. Making the playoffs already made the season an incredible success for New York, so it was just an added bonus that they upset the 3-seed Minnesota Vikings in the wildcard round 31-24. As I mentioned before, the Giants' run came to an end thanks to a trouncing from the Eagles, but with how well the season went, it really looked like New York was finally turning the corner. Seeing as New York finally had something going, they need to approach the 2023 offseason strategically, mainly because this offseason had a huge wrinkle in it. The aforementioned Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley both had expiring contracts and were set to hit free agency. Now, you, the viewer, and me are people of common sense. We can both see that the most ideal route is re-signing both to a semi-long-term deal here. Both of them performed fantastic in their contract year and definitely earned themselves another long-term contract. However, this really wasn't on the table. The cap situation for New York wasn't the best, but that wasn't to say they couldn't keep both. A lot of people figured what New York could do was sign one of them to a long-term deal this offseason, then franchise tag the other, push it off to next offseason when the cap situation was a little more certain and they had a lot more figured out. Because again, both did earn a contract the previous season, but just with New York's situation, there was only one contract out to give. But again, that wasn't to say they were guaranteed to lose one this offseason. And that's the route the Giants went. And again, you, the viewer, and me are people of common sense. We can see that the obvious choice to give the contract to, rather than the franchise tag, is Saquon Barkley. Barkley has been much more consistent throughout his career up to this point and shown that his ceiling is a top 5 to 7 running back in the NFL. And no diss to Daniel Jones here, but he was a larger reason for the Giants' success in the 2022 season. Pushing Jones' extension, seeing as he had a really good season, but it being the only good one of his career, this was the logical option. Now, seeing as we're sitting here discussing this very in depth, I'm sure you can see where this is going. The Giants re-signed quarterback Daniel Jones to a 4-year, $160 million contract with $82 million guaranteed, and franchise tagged Saquon Barkley. With it, the Giants lost a key piece of their young secondary and safety Julian Love as he departed in free agency to Seattle. However, the Giants were able to capitalize on their new status, having seemingly turned the corner, trading for Raiders Pro Bowl tight end Darren Waller. At the draft, the Giants hoped to make up for losing a piece of their secondary, selecting cornerback Deonte Banks out of Maryland at pick 24. 2024. Coming into the season, the doubt still loomed as the Giants' win projections sat at around 7 games. But New York was given a golden opportunity to prove that last year was not a fluke, opening up with a home date on Sunday Night Football against the division rival Cowboys. I think if you're a Giants fan, if you're involved in the Giants organization, could not have asked for a better opportunity to show that this was a new era of Giants football. The Giants were here to stay, a new dawn in the NFL, and the Giants were going to be the new rulers. This was their time, and no one was going to... Yeah, no exaggeration. I literally do not think that could have started any worse. There is no case scenario that was worse than what actually happened. And it looked like the season was spiraling quickly, as in the following week, they went down 28-7 in the third quarter of their Week 2 matchup against the Kyler Murray-less Cardinals. The Giants were able to pull off the comeback, winning 31-28, but the season just ended up spiraling anyway. The Giants lost 4 in a row, in which Daniel Jones suffered a neck injury in Week 5 and missed the next 3 games. Sitting at 2-6 upon his return, the Giants faced the Raiders on the road. Jones ended up tearing his ACL in this game, missing the remainder of the 2023 season. All told, in 6 starts, Daniel Jones finished the 2023 season throwing for 909 yards, 2 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and a 70.5 passer rating. The rest of the season was a carousel between veteran Tyrod Taylor and rookie Tommy DeVito, which included highs like a 3-game win streak capped off with an upset win over the Packers on Monday Night Football, 24-22 in Week 14, but lows like a 49-17 loss to the Cowboys in Week 10 and a 24-6 loss to the Saints in Week 15. The Giants wrapped up 2023 with a 6-11 record, a complete 180 from last season. Saquon Barkley had a disappointing season by his standards, but was the highlight of the offense, as he rushed for 962 yards and 6 touchdowns, as well as adding another 280 yards and 4 touchdowns through the air. Darren Waller just also did not become the receiving threat at tight end the Giants thought and hoped that he would, though, that wasn't entirely on him with the QB carousel going on. He wrapped up 2023 catching 52 passes for 552 yards and 1 touchdown. Now, as I'm sure we can all recall, because I literally just talked about it, the 2024 offseason had one large cloud looming overhead, and it was Saquon Barkley sized and shaped. Seeing as the Giants told Barkley that he was not as big of a priority as a QB who just threw 2 touchdowns to 6 interceptions the season prior, he wasn't really in a rush to re-sign with the Giants. Can you really blame the guy? Barkley tested the open market and ended up leaving for the division rival Eagles on a 3-year, $37.75 million deal. Not only that, standout safety Xavier McKinney also departed in free agency, joining the Packers on a 4-year, $67 million deal. Well, on the other side of the coin, in losing star standouts, you are given some cap space to distribute across the team. The Giants didn't really do this. Their 2 biggest additions were on the O-line and guard Jermaine Illuminor and center John Runyon. Good signings, sure, but by no means needle movers. The Giants' attempt at a needle mover was running back Devin Singletary. Amazing. Seeing as the free agent market wasn't one the Giants seemed to be that interested in, they looked to the trade market. In exchange for their 2024 second and 5th round picks, as well as the 2025 5th round pick, the Giants landed one of the league's best edge rushers from the Carolina Panthers in Brian Burns and immediately signed him to a 5-year, $141 million extension. At the draft, the Giants were in possession of the 5th overall pick. In the 5 picks before, 3 quarterbacks, wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr., and tackle Joe Alt were selected. So the Giants had a great pool of players to draft to fill their lengthy list of needs. A ton of O-line still on the board like Olu Fashanu, anyone on defense still available at this point, and plenty of receivers in a very deep class still available at this point. The Giants chose to draft what their offense had been lacking for years, a true number 1 receiver, because now with Barkley gone, they likely couldn't get by without it. With the 6th pick in the 2024 draft, the Giants selected wide receiver out of LSU, Malik Neighbors. When training camp started, it started with a surprise as tight end Darren Waller announced his retirement. If you ask me though, this is just a classic addition by subtraction situation. With the production Waller put up, or really lack thereof, in the 2023 season, there really just wasn't much to provide from his point. And I think it was just better off that he was off the roster at this point. Heading into the season, despite the low expectations projected to win around 6 games again, the Giants had a favorable stretch early in the season to potentially come out of the gates hot, including a Week 1 matchup against who many thought to be one of the worst teams in the NFL heading into 2024, given that they were starting Sam Darnold at quarterback in the Minnesota Vikings. Yeah, so it actually turns out Sam Darnold is really good now, and the Vikings were really good too, as they shredded the Giants 28-6. The Giants opened the season 1-3, but after a a huge upset win in Seattle off the backs of a blocked game-tying field goal attempt that was taken back for a touchdown as time expired. Some thought that, hey, maybe not only the win in Seattle, but the fashion it happened in, maybe that can give this team a jolt and give them a spark. And they got a golden opportunity to do so, welcoming in the Bengals on Sunday Night Football the following week, who were struggling a bit themselves at 1-4. It was just not the Giants' night, as against a very weak Cincinnati defense, they were only able to muster 7 points off the backs of a rough night from Daniel Jones, throwing for 205 yards, 1 interception, and a 57.5 passer rating, as the Giants lost 17-7. The Giants dropped their next 4 as well, sitting at 2-8 heading into the bye after a 20-17 overtime defeat to the 2-7 Panthers in Germany, in which Daniel Jones threw 190 yards and 2 interceptions. During the bye, the Giants benched Daniel Jones in favor of Tommy DeVito. 4 days later, Jones asked for and was granted his release from the team. Jones wrapped up the 2024 season throwing 2,070 yards, 8 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and a 79.4 passer rating. He wrapped up his Giants tenure with a 24-44-1 record, which was good for the lowest winning percentage amongst quarterbacks with at least 50 starts since he entered the league in 2019. And he also recorded the lowest touchdown percentage of quarterbacks with at least 1,000 pass attempts in that same time span. And I wanted to bring this up too because I just thought it was kind of funny. There was a point in the season in week 9 in a home game against the Commanders in which Daniel Jones threw a touchdown pass. This was his first touchdown pass thrown at MetLife Stadium. Keep in mind, his home stadium, the stadium he plays half of his games in every season. It was his first touchdown thrown at MetLife Stadium in 672 days. That equates to 22 months. Unreal. In DeVito's first start against the Buccaneers in Week 12, the Giants not only lost 30-7, in which DeVito only threw 189 yards, but he also sustained a forearm injury. So in came Drew Lock for the Thanksgiving game in Dallas. In a 27-20 loss, Lock earned the start the next week, which ended up being arguably one of the NFL games of all time, in a 14-11 loss to the Saints, which debatably will be remembered. If it is, it will be as Derek Carr's last career game. Sure. The Giants went back to DeVito the next week against the Ravens. Then after completing 10 passes for 68 yards, he suffered a concussion. So right back to Locke and for the rest of the season as well. The Giants went on to lose that one 35-14, the next one in Atlanta 34-7. At this point, the Giants were sitting at 2-13 in firm contention with the Titans and Browns for the number 1 overall pick in the following draft. The projected number 1 pick was potential franchise quarterback out of Miami, Cam Ward, something that all 3 of these teams could desperately need and use, with the projected number 2 pick being two-way superstar out of Colorado, Travis Hunter. Really not a bad compensation price for losing out on one, as again, he could also be something these teams desperately need. Heading into week 17, the Giants had the inside track on getting the number 1 pick. So if they lost out, that meant the number 1 pick was theirs. In week 17, in came to town the 7-8 Indianapolis Colts. Not a powerhouse by any means, but still a team fighting for their playoff lives, and still a team expected to beat the Giants by a pretty decent margin. Heading into this game, according to ESPN, the Giants had a 57% chance to land the number 1 overall pick, and a loss to the Colts in this week would have made those skyrocket to 86%. I really want you to keep those numbers in mind here for the next couple minutes. So, the Giants did the most New York Giants thing ever. They played the game of their lives off the backs of the best game of Drew Lock's career. Lock threw for 309 yards, 4 touchdowns, added in a rushing touchdown, and a 155.3 passer rating. Malik Neighbors caught 7 passes for 171 yards and 2 touchdowns. Wan'Dale Robinson caught 5 passes for 71 yards and a touchdown. The Giants defense forced 3 turnovers as the Giants beat the Colts 45-33, sending the Giants back down to the 4th overall pick. The Giants lost the season finale the next week in Philadelphia 20-13, and it got them back to the 3rd overall pick, but the damage was done. The Giants finished 2024 with a 3-14 record. Rookie Malik Neighbors finished a strong rookie season despite shaky quarterback play, catching 109 passes for 1,204 yards and 7 touchdowns. In the absence of Saquon Barkley, who, in case you're wondering, went on to win Offensive Player of the Year and the Super Bowl in his first year with Philadelphia, Devin Singletary was actually surpassed by a 5th-round rookie Tyrone Tracy, who rushed for 839 yards and 5 touchdowns. Heading into the 2025 offseason, seeing as the Giants lost out on the number 1 overall pick and in doing so Cam Ward, they needed to pivot on what their plan at quarterback was. Because again, Daniel Jones was gone now, and that need for quarterback was still there. In free agency, the Giants signed quarterback Russell Wilson, who overall had a strong 2024 season, leading the Steelers to a wildcard spot, but also really struggled at the end of the season and was largely viewed as a reason the Steelers lost both a division title and their first and only playoff game. Seeing as Wilson was coming up on his age 37 season, it was clear that this was a bridge move and selecting a young quarterback was on the horizon. The Giants splurged a bit in free agency, snagging one of the best safeties in the class in Javon Holland from the Dolphins on a 3-year $45 million deal, as well as corner Paulson Adebo from the Saints on a 3-year $54 million deal. With the third overall pick in the draft, the Giants still had their pick at a great pool of prospects. The Giants used it to bolster their already very good D-line, selecting the best edge rusher in the class in Penn State's Abdul Carter. But that was not all, as the Giants made an aggressive move to make sure they got their next franchise quarterback, as they traded a second and third round pick in this draft to the Texans to get back into the first round at pick 25, where they selected quarterback out of Mississippi, Jackson Dart. And in the fourth round, the Giants scooped up one of the more intriguing prospects of this draft as well, running back out of Arizona State, Cam Scadaboo. As the season got going, it was projected to definitely be a rebuilding one for New York, as their projections sat at around 5 games. And the start of the season reflected this too. New York started the season 0-3. To this point, Russell Wilson struggled mightily, as through his first 3 games, he threw for 778 yards, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and a 75.3 passer rating. The Giants had seen enough at this point, as before their Week 4 matchup against the undefeated Chargers, they announced rookie Jackson Dart would be the starter going forward. In his first game, Dart managed the game very well. The Giants' game plan centered around making Dart's job easy, as he only completed 13 of his 20 passes for 111 yards and a touchdown, but he did add in 54 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown as well, as the Giants upset the Chargers 21-18. However, the worst possible thing for Dart's development in his rookie year ended up happening, as when second-year standout wide receiver Malik Neighbors went up for a Dart deep ball, he landed on his knee awkwardly and ended up tearing his ACL, ending his season, and the potential connection between him and the rookie Dart for the 2025 season. The Giants had to press on, as they dropped their next one to the Saints 26-14, in which Dart struggled and turned the ball over 3 times, one of which being a game-sealing scoop and score. Coming back home for a Thursday night matchup against the defending champion Eagles, the Giants shocked the world and put a beating on the Eagles off the backs of another solid game from Dart, but in main part to a breakout performance by rookie Cam Scadaboo. He had been putting some solid performances up before this one, but this one officially put him on the map, as he rushed for 98 yards and 3 touchdowns on the night en route to a 34-17 upset win. The Giants used this momentum to roll into Denver the next week, as up against the 4-2 Broncos, the Giants stormed out to a 19-0 lead in the third, then later a 26-8 lead in the fourth. Surely up by that much, not only in the fourth quarter, more than halfway through the fourth quarter. The Giants managed the game well and brought home yet another win. Right? Right? A total implosion is the best way I can describe it, as after Denver scored again to make it 26-16, a Dart interception set up another scoring drive to make it 26-23, then Denver later made it 30-26 with just under a minute to go. Dart, though, made the first big moment of his career, as after a couple big throws in a Riley Moss DPI, he punched in a 2-yard rushing touchdown to make it 32-30 with 37 seconds left. Just that, because they missed the extra point, but I'm sure it won't matter. Come on now, this is the New York Giants we're talking about. Of course it mattered. The Broncos got into field goal range in 3 plays and kicked the game-winning field goal as time expired. Just an absolutely atrocious loss for the Giants. The following week, in the second quarter of a rematch with the Eagles, Cam Scadaboo unfortunately dislocated his ankle, ending his season. He finished the season rushing for 410 yards and 5 touchdowns. It was at this point that head coach Brian Daboll was perceived by many to be on the hot seat, as many believed that if the Giants didn't show any signs of improvement soon, he would be on his way out. The Giants dropped their next 2 against the 49ers and Bears, and after that Week 10 loss to Chicago, the Giants fired head coach Brian Daboll and promoted offensive coordinator Mike Kafka as the interim head coach for the rest of the season. After a couple more losses, but exciting ones with the always fun Jameis Winston starting in place of the injured Dart, for the second season in a row, the Giants were the first team eliminated from playoff contention after their Week 12 loss to the Lions. And sitting at 2-13 yet again, the Giants were yet again in contention for the number 1 overall pick. This time it wasn't as urgent, as obviously the Giants already got their guy at quarterback in Jackson Dart. Dart. So it wasn't necessarily a big deal that the Giants won their last 2 games of the season, a 34-10 win over the Raiders and a 34-17 win over the Cowboys, to finish 4-13. In 12 starts, Dart wrapped up his rookie season throwing for 2,272 yards, 15 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and a 91.7 passer rating, and added in 487 rushing yards and 9 rushing touchdowns as well. Fellow first-round rookie Abdul Carter saw limited action as he only started in 6 games, but was still able to rack up 4 sacks and 34 quarterback pressures. Heading into the 2026 offseason, there was some optimism in Giants country, but this offseason began with a head coaching search. The Giants took the experienced route this time, landing on former Ravens head coach John Harbaugh. In this offseason saw quite a bit of turnover with the roster, as they brought in tight end Isaiah Likely, linebacker Tremaine Edmonds, and defensive tackle DJ Reader, but let wide receiver Wan'Dale Robinson walk in free agency, and later traded all-pro defensive tackle Dexter Lawrence to the Bengals for the 10th overall pick. With the 5th overall pick, the Giants had the cards fall their way, as arguably the best edge rusher in the class in Arvell Reese fell to them at that pick, which they gladly scooped up. At 10, the Giants opted to help out the O-line a bit, scooping up tackle Francis Mauigoa out of Miami. Despite coming off a 4-win season, there was a lot of hope and optimism coming into the 2026 offseason for the Giants. They still got a young core, they've now got an experienced head coach leading the way, they got their number 1 receiver Malik Neighbors coming back healthy next year, they still got that wicked good defensive line despite trading Dexter Lawrence. There's a lot breaking in New York's way. Surely they're finally gonna put this stretch of just bad football behind them and finally take that next step.
What an honor, what a privilege it is to be here, and without further ado, I'm grateful, I'm honored, I'm pleasured to introduce the 45th and 47th President of the United States of America, President Donald J. Trump.
Jackson is one of our leaders. He's the face of our franchise. He not only represents himself and what he does, but he represents all of us. And that goes for anybody who wears a Giants uniform. But if he chooses to align himself with a man like President Trump, it's my responsibility, based on what I believe and what I stand on, to not only show my teammates that I'm against that, but to show the world. And that doesn't mean that we have to spread hate. It doesn't mean that me and Jackson hate each other or we have beef. I sit next to Jackson every day, every team meeting, we close, we talk. As long as we make sure we got the same goal as a team and our goals align, which they do, and I feel like that's all that matters. So I just want to move past this, and yeah, that's it.
I also understand in this world, politics can be a sensitive matter, a sensitive topic. I also understand that I am the quarterback of the New York Giants, and that involves a lot of responsibility. It's under a limelight, under a microscope, and there's a lot that comes with that, and it's been something that I've embraced. I've loved being here. I've loved the city of New York. I love the city of New Jersey, the people that I've met here. It's just been a really amazing experience, and there's not another place that I'd rather be. Most importantly, the people in this organization, my teammates, the staff.
So, that all happened, and the reactions from the media and, more importantly, the Giants locker room were not all peachy. And I'll try to keep my personal opinions on the matter out of this, as that's really not what I want this video to be about. But if we're objectively looking at the entire situation, objectively speaking on it, President Donald Trump is a very polarizing figure. So for Dart to pretty much be the face of his campaign is really just asking for conflict to seep in, as we saw with Abdul Carter's comments on the matter. Look, on paper, and looking at this just from a football perspective, yes, the Giants should absolutely improve in 2026 and the years following. They've got a great thing going on paper, and again, they've got a really young core they can build around. But personally speaking, this entire Dart situation and the reaction following it, I just can't help but be reminded of a certain boat trip picture all the way back in the 2016-17 season and 2017 playoffs. If you need me to jog your memory, back before their playoff matchup against the Packers, the Giants wide receiver core took a boat trip and posted a picture of it to social media. The Giants got waxed in Green Bay in that playoff game, thanks in part to some drops from that receiver core, and had a 2017 season so bad it sent them into a lengthy rebuild, which segued into the entirety of the video here today. Look, whether you agree with me or not on that this is same old Giants and they're going to find a way to screw it up again, you can't help but admit the parallels are like uncanny here. The only thing stopping the Giants from succeeding is themselves. And that's a phrase in sports that's thrown around a lot more in a positive light, with the context usually being that a team has put together a really good core. Again, the only way they can screw that up is if they get in the way of themselves. But when we look at the New York Giants, I think that is, certainly within the realm of possibility. So to put a bow on all of it, I guess what I'm saying is, when it comes to the New York Giants evaluating on if they've truly put something together and if they can finally exit out of this rebuild, to me, the Giants are just a team where I'll believe it when I see it. But until then, I'm out. But that is it for me. If you had any thoughts of your own on the New York Giants, feel free to drop them in the comments. Any thoughts on what I said about the Giants, feel free to also drop them in the comments. If you like what you're seeing, feel free to like and subscribe. It's completely optional, but greatly appreciated. I got a couple more videos like this on the way. I'm glad you guys are loving these videos. They're a lot of fun to make. But until then, that is it for me, and I'll see you in the next one.